Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? It's me, Paddy from across the shock, and I'm going to have a bloody rant. I am just going to have a good old rant, but it's not a bad rant. It's just how I feel that the knife community, and I know that's a really upsetting word for a lot of people, but do I feel part of the knife community? No, I'm a bit of an outsider. I'm not a great socializer. That's a lot to do with my past and how I sort of live my life now. But I have made some of the best friends that I've ever had in this community or hobby, whatever you want. I prefer it as a hobby because it is my hobby. It's my only hobby. It's the hobby that entertains me every single day. And I've had hobbies all my life. I've been a sportsman, but this is a hobby that just every day I am part of that hobby. Or I do something to do with my hobby. Never had that before, where every day it's been the thing. So, but there's some things I hear around, and look, I'm not trying to pick on anybody. This is not me shouting out people or doing anything like that. There's enough of that. You don't need me to do that. But what I want to talk about, now it's a selection of knives here to show my point of view. Here's the first thing. When COVID started, we got an influx of hundreds, probably thousands of knife people into the community. And I'm using that just for want of a better word. And it was a lot of people who were hardworking people, but they ended up finding that they had a lot of time in their hands. They were working from home. They maybe were knife, they enjoyed a pocket knife and things like that, but they ended up slipping into the hobby. And I think that's what we all do. You slip in and then you become addicted to it. And that's fantastic. That's fantastic that people come in, but they come in at all, even people who had, maybe not so much income because they were having to use it for petrol to get to work, for, having lunches, all that sort of thing. So they had a bit of extra money, so people started buying knives. And then they found out YouTube. And they found out about how to find out about other knives was YouTube. And YouTube is completely addictive. Like anything on these little square boxes, Facebook, anything like that, you become addicted to it if that's your nature. Thankfully, I'm not that way inclined. But I do love YouTube because I think it's a font of all knowledge. Never mind knives, you can find anything on YouTube. If you want to do anything practical, I mean, there's so many good things about YouTube, but you can get sucked into people who are selling you the dream. And again, that's like anything else. And if you fall for it, it can cost you a fortune. And I have seen so many people come in and they get sucked into buying so many knives. And 9 times out of 10, in a couple of years or whatever it is, they end up selling all their collection because they need the money. And that happens to us all in life. If you're a married man, I've been married a long time. I've had 2 marriages, but I've been married a long time in this one, 25 years. So life is like the roller coaster, as they say. And there's times when you have more excess money than you don't. You need to put your money somewhere else, so you don't have money for your hobby, so it cuts back. And that's, again, absolutely normal at any hobby you do. I went through the same when I played golf. I wanted the best set of clubs, and I changed every year. And then when I couldn't do that, the hobby wasn't as exciting anymore. So there's lots of reasons why hobbies go up and down. But I just wanted some myths that I've heard people say, and it was all because of one comment. Now, this comment didn't put me in a bad mood. It didn't annoy me in the slightest. I thought, this man's just stating what he thinks. And it was about the Chris Reeve knife. And he said, thank you for showing. It was very polite. It was nothing rude about it. So I'm not even going to say his name because I don't want it to be like that. But I had pictures of my Chris Reeve up, and the bevel you can see is nice in the bevel. But he said, I really like the knife, but you put a secondary bevel on that big bevel, and it really ruined the knife for me. And I thought, right, well, that's not exactly what I thought initially, but I thought it was just his opinion because obviously he was a sharpener and he likes his just the bevel to be a single bevel. And what is a secondary bevel? A secondary bevel, for those that don't know, you have your bevel that you'll put on a knife. You'll do a sharpening, you put a knife bevel, and it should be completely flat from here to the edge. Yeah? If you're going to do that V grind. Well, here's the thing. Let me tell you. This knife is a fantastic slicer. Not just because of the bevel, but because it's got a hollow grind. Now, if I had the patience and the time, I would sit down and I would do lovely beveled edges that are absolutely perfect every time. But the truth is, to be honest, most of the time I can't be arsed. I just want the knife to get sharp again. And again, like I freehand sharpen nearly all the time. When I'm putting an initial bevel on, I usually use a fixed blade. You know, if it's a high-end knife that I want to have, you know, I'll put a fixed sharpening system onto it, and that gives me the perfect sharpening. But most of the time, this is what I use to sharpen, or something similar. This is about 1,000 grit. This is about 2,000 grit ceramic, somewhere around that. That's what I use to sharpen most of the time. Now, I've always used things like this that are just cheap, easy ways to sharpen. This is off the Lansky system, which I've got the more up-to-date workshop one, so I wasn't using this, and I thought, well, I'm not wasting these stones because the Lansky stones are brilliant. So I use these to hand sharpen. And they're handy because you've got the plastic bit below, you can keep it up there, and your palm is away from the edge of the sharpening area. I think they're just super for a hand sharpener. But that's what I use. And I don't sit down with it. I see people and they do this and they get it all level. And that's fine. If that's the way you want to do it and they'll put the markers on it. I used to do all this and they gently and they'll do it right the way, you know, they'll do a nice sharpen. They'll get it so that it's nice and they'll move it about there and they'll get it so that it's absolutely perfect. That's not me. I have no patience. I just get it on, put it at the angle that I think it's going to be, and it's usually a bit higher than what's on it because I lift it up too much. But that's because I want to. I just want to get the edge back on it. Does it affect my knife, whether there's a secondary bevel or not? No. Doesn't affect it. To me, it doesn't affect it because as long as my knife can slice a bit of paper like that, as long as it does that, I am quite happy. This knife is razor sharp. Sharp, takes hair off my arms with not a problem. So the secondary bevel is a little bit where I don't lay it completely flat on the bevel that's already there. I just put a little edge on it. And to be honest with you, if that starts to become that I'm not getting it, I'll redo the bevel edge. But as for putting you off the knife, again, that would never bother me because if I see a knife like that, I know I can fix it if I want it. So again, learning to sharpen really does take away things like that. I mean, I'm not that fussy. And I suppose that's what I want to say. That fellow was obviously very fussy about his edges. I just want a working knife. That's all I want, a working knife. And if I get a wee secondary bevel, couldn't care less. Scandi grinds. I've had this 15 years, this knife, right? This knife has gone through, I was a bushcrafter, it's gone through everything. Do you think when I'm out in the bush, I'll get a nice stone out and I'll make sure that that's laying perfectly flat and I'll go down? No, I just do it like that. And I get a secondary bevel. And it's not a big secondary bevel. And have I ever, you can see that there you've got a secondary bevel on this Scandi. Because over the years, I've just used it, sharpened it, put it back on the bit of wood, started carving or whatever I was doing. I baton with this, everything. No need to. I've no absolute need. Does it take away from it as a knife? Absolutely not. It's done me for 15 years. I never felt from the first day when you get that initial crisp sharpness. Didn't bother me because it still cuts every bit as good, done everything I wanted to do. Didn't bother me. When I was a young boy, the wee belt knives we used to have. Now, this is more made modern, but it's leather. This is Ashley Harrison made this wee one. Super little knife. Again, steel. Does it matter? Absolutely not. I couldn't care. As long as it's heat treated and it can take an edge. This little knife, thin stock, it cuts. It's just a great little camp knife to have on you for cutting bits of string or doing whatever. You can actually do feather sticks with it. Not a problem. Here's this knife, a beautiful Bark River. I've got nice knives if I need them, and it's another thing I'm going to get. This is every bit as good as a bushcraft knife. Now, that's a bit more heavy. If I want heavy, like the Bark River, this is the other thing that I used for 15 years when I was bushcrafting. This is what I used to baton wood. This is what I used for chopping down small trees. Delimbing, one of the best delimbing tools I've ever got. And it's a kitchen knife. It's a German kitchen knife with the, what do they call it? They have a super name for it. Forged German, MOV steel, ice hardened and glass finished. Doesn't that sound super? It's probably something like 8CR. Do you know what I mean? Maybe even not as good as 8CR. But it's a fantastic knife and it's easily sharpened. And easily sharpened is what I like more than anything else, because it's the knives I use more than anything else that are easy sharpened. So that's that out of the way. That's my sharpening habits. I'm bad, but I can get a good edge, and I've never worried about a secondary bevel going on any sort of a knife, be it bushcraft and plus the fact, sometimes you put a wee secondary bevel on, you'll get extra cutting out of that knife. That's what I find. I could be totally wrong. I don't care, because that's how I find it. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. And I hear people, going on about more as, more is all right for basic. More is not all right for basic. More is all right for anything. Absolutely anything. But if you don't like a more, you don't like that plastic look, there's plenty of other things out there. This is my newest sort of one that I've used since I got it I've had this for years now. I got it from Brother. This is in micarta. Look, bolted all the way through. Full tang, which a Mora isn't. Thicker tang on it. It's got the Scandi grind on it, but you'll see there's a secondary bevel on it as well. Because when I'm out there and it goes a little bit dull, if I've been using it in wood all day and batoning or doing whatever, I just stick it. Well, here's the one that I would take out when I'm going out. This is a 600 grit. And that's all I need for something like this. I'll put it on it. The edge will do everything I need on a bit of wood. So there's plenty of options, and there's plenty of way that everybody does things, right? And again, I'm going to go back to that COVID thing. I think an awful lot of COVID was, people coming in and they started off too high. And that's just my opinion. Their expectations were set by the new YouTube come around and saying, oh, you need this steel, you need that steel. And they missed out on an awful lot of great steel. The biggest myth that I hear people saying, and I'm mostly a traditional slip joint man now, is that Rough Rider are just cheap crap. Don't buy them. This is a Rough Rider. This is a Queen, which is made by the same company. This is a Marbles, made by the same company. These are three. Look at that. How good looking are them three knives? And in the States, these are no more than 20 quid or maybe a little bit over for something like this. Super knives. And you can get every pattern you can think of, and some you'll never have heard of. But here's the but. It's 440A. Isn't that terrible? 440A. Let me tell you, in the UK, we had our own stainless steels over here. Most countries like America were built on 440, 420 steels. Do you know what I mean? They were built with it. That's what the ranch hands, the builders, the carpenters, it's what they would have used. Something like that, and probably less. A lot of carbon steel, which is, even less. So these are an absolute... Are they just a gateway? No, because I know people who work manually and use a knife every day, and they'll carry a Rough Rider with them every day. And why do they do that? It's easy sharpened. It's an inexpensive knife that if you damage or leave behind somewhere where you're working, you're not going to worry about it. But you're definitely not underpowered with this. Again, if you carry something very simple like this in your work bag, if you work with your tools, well, I would go with a 600 because that's always enough for any knife. But 600 grit, and you can keep that knife going as many days as you like in a row. It's just, they're super. Do not be put off by the price, because the price is fantastic and what you're getting is fantastic. What else? Steels. Let's talk about steels. Here's one of my favourite brands. This is the Arthur Wright. This one is the Tackler, just a new pattern. I'd never had the Tackler before. It's good Arthur Wright pull. That's why I like. Look at that. This is the new wood they're using, Eka wood, because rosewood is now becoming nearly impossible or too expensive to buy for budget knives. This is Eka wood. It's a very hard wood, harder than rosewood. Will last longer. It's more weather resistant than rosewood. Just a super. It's EKKI. It's called, and it's in the mahogany family. But super looking. It looks as if you've had it for years, but yet this is brand new. I just love it. Absolutely love it. This is in C70 carbon steel. A very basic steel, but yet it is so simple to put an edge back on it. You don't have to sharpen for 10 minutes. 3-4 swipes sometimes is enough to put that edge back on it again. That's why I like it, because this is the knives that I use most of the time. Isn't that crazy? I've got, S90V, I've got all these top steels, but this is the knife that I use most of the time. Why? Because it's useful. The steel is simple to resharpen. Even if you're a crap sharpener, you'll get an edge on this. You'll get an edge. As long as you're doing the basics, averagely, you'll get an edge on it and it'll cut. And it's thin as well. Geometry cuts. Yeah? Your edge might be crap and it might go dull on this, but it'll still cut cardboard because of that thin geometry. And that's what most of us flipping do, is cut cardboard. But you know what I mean? It's just, these are things that the fallacies about you need such and such a blade. You blooming don't. You really genuinely don't. Have I got the height? Yeah, Magna Cut, S90V, S30V. I love S30V, S35VN. Another thing that I hear saying, the Benchmade 940. Oh, it's a fantastic. Now, this knife is 25-year-old. The actual pattern, 25-year-old. The pattern is immaculate. It gives you 4-finger grip. You can sneak up if you really want to, but it gives you a 4-finger grip. It's got a large blade. Look at that, the blade to handle ratio on that knife. Probably one of the best in the marketplace still today. It is fantastic. And it's super slim. You've got the axis lock, which is not infallible, but it doesn't happen that often. It's happened to me 6 years. It's happened once with this knife. I got a new one and it's been in there about 4 years now, maybe 5 years. Never had another problem with it, and it's still working as good today. So it has a little bit of infallibility, but that's all right. But this knife, you hear it all the time. People love the shape. I love the shape, or they hate it. I love the shape of the 940. Is it thin behind the edge? No, it's not. I mean, that's just the honest answer. It's not got a thick stock, but it's not been taken down to where it's ultra thin. This knife was made, and I think if people understand it, this knife was made by the maker for his friend who was a farmer. And he wanted a knife where he could have a tip that he could poke and pry with, because that's what workmen, they do all the wrong things with a knife. They'll do a bit of prying, they'll do all that. And he wanted a knife that could take it. This knife has proven over the years, God, it's even been used by people as a screwdriver. Do you know what I mean? Just getting it into a hex and turning it. It's such a fantastic knife. It's an S30V. You can get it in S90V. There's absolutely no need other than the fact that you want it. Do you know what I mean? That's it. There's always that fact. If you want it and you can afford it, buy it. We buy what we want. I'm not telling people what they can buy and want, but it's this fallacy that this knife doesn't slice. What do you do in a day that needs a knife sharper than that? I just don't know what people are doing in a day that they need a sharper knife. Or if you're bringing this knife out, why do you want to slice the skin off a tomato? Don't understand. It's a work knife. It's a work knife. We don't want a thin blade, whereas if we're twisting, we're going to chip it or damage it or do. It's a work knife. That's what it is. It's not meant to be a pretty carry knife, but again, I just love everything about this knife, the shape, everything. I just think it is super in hand. So stop worrying about how thin the knife is. Unless you're going to be a chef, buy a chef's knife. Don't be buying any other of these knives if you're going to use it as a chef's knife. Now, I like using knives in the kitchen. Would I use that one? No, just wouldn't. Because that's not what it's, it's not what it can do. Never mind what it's for. It's not what it can do really well. Now, if I'm cutting a sandwich or doing something like that and butter and a peanut butter, it'll do fine. Absolutely fine. But as for maybe slicing something very thin, not your knife. Don't get it. Just don't get it. But if you want a work knife, that's the best you can get, in my opinion. Another myth. Chinese make crap knives. They don't. They just don't. They can do, and they have plenty of crap knives. And I suppose, especially in America at the minute, because we don't do bigger knives over here in the UK, and that's a point I'm going to get on to. Because America can have all sorts, you can have flippers, flick knives, all sorts of that. This is a concept, and I picked this because it's one of the newer brands. Titanium died really well. Not dyed, whatever that's coloured. It's got a fairly thick backspring, but by God, this is a flat grind, and it comes down to next to nothing because you have that deep blade. This, again, is one of those slicers that, honestly, this just takes the biscuit. It is just a super knife from tip to toe. That's the way they come. This is an amazing knife. It's got S35 VN, good American steel. It's got titanium. It's got a nice titanium pocket clip. It's a frame lock. It locks up fantastically. Hasn't moved from there. It's got an action that is unbelievable. Unbelievable. About £140 these cost over in the UK. This is the Convict. An amazing knife. What did I get it for? I got this for £40. The way it is, it's like new out of the box. Because it was on one of my sites over here and nobody would buy it. And in the end, I think it got down to about 50. And I thought, I can't leave that. I'd never had a concept. And I thought, well, I'll just buy that. That'll be a nice channel knife to have and see what it's like. Flipping heck. I ended up getting it for £40 for S35BN, and nobody wanted to buy it. What is wrong with you out there? This is a super knife. Now, if you don't buy a knife because it's Chinese, I understand it. I accept that. I can see the reason behind it. That's fine. I just don't care. If it's a good knife, I want it. This is an amazing knife at a budget price. I got it for 40 flipping pound. Go try buying a 25-year-old 940 in S30V for £40. Not a chance. Not a chance. So there's a place for these. A place for them. And the one thing that I didn't mention was I get an awful lot of people from abroad saying that they feel sorry that we can't have big knives here in the UK. That's not true. Don't feel sorry. Don't feel sorry. I use this all the time. I use this. I use this all the time. So we can use big knives, but we just have to be more careful of where we use them because it has to be legal. So if you get into the woods, you can carry a big knife. You can carry a locking knife. If you're in the woods, if you're a carpenter, you can carry a locking knife. But I'm not a carpenter, so if I want to use knives, I'll use it around your property when I'm working about the house or whatever. I'll carry this. Absolutely love it. So it's not that we can't. It's just we have to be more selective where we're using it. Would I love that to change? Absolutely, because I like carrying a bigger knife. But do I need a bigger knife? And this is the thing. I don't need anything bigger than this. And this design, this is the UK PK that Sal designed this knife pattern for the UK market years ago. Absolutely years ago. He designed this for the UK market. I don't need anything more than this. I don't even need this much, but I don't need anything more than this. This is a modern knife. I just wanted to show it. It's super. This is the old-fashioned model of it, but this is an S30V. So, I mean, this is just an amazing work knife. It's got the forward finger choil, unlike a Delica. Same size as Delica, but it has that proper forward finger choil and a man's forward finger choil. You can get your whole finger in it, and you're kept away by the little nub at the top of the ricasso. There you go, and it holds it like that. It's an amazing knife, and you can get the teardrop, the straight teardrop. But I love this shape and size. This is Spyderco. This is in G10. I'd rather have that than the textured plastic that they use. I mean, this G10 is only plastic, but it's not smooth. There's grip. This to me has got to be one of Sal's best designs in a knife. It's so good. You couldn't close it on yourself because you've got a bloody big finger in there. And well, it might jump like that, but as long as you don't take your finger out of the way, that's how it takes a lot to break that. Look at my finger to break it. There you are. But as long as your things are, you can't cut yourself. Safety wise, everything. I don't need anything more than this for anything that I do. And if I need something bigger, I'll go and get this. Do you know what I mean? My Bark River will do that. So, I mean, you can buy this with the lesser steel on it or whatever. And when I'm saying lesser, I don't mean it in any way derogatory, but I think they do it in HCR 13 or so. I have no idea. But this is the perfect EDC. This will do anything for me. Is it an exciting knife? Not particularly. But I do like it. It is different looking, like all Spydercos tend to be different looking. But don't feel sorry for us, because I don't need a locking knife to make my life complete. I just don't. But when I can get things like this is what I'll go and pick and use more than anything else. I mean, if them two are sitting together and I need to go in and cut a box up or do anything, I'll guarantee you this will get lifted and this won't. I purposely have to carry this in a rotation just to get to use it and remember just how good it is. But I personally have changed to traditional knives, and I'll pick this up every time over an awful lot of knives. And then you get things like this, and you get the Jack Wolf knives, which are Chinese made. Listen to that opening. That is amazing. This is an original design by Ben. I love this knife. I love it. A little bit upswept, but not too much. You've still got an amazing point on the end of this if you need to get in somewhere and open something. And people say, that, that trailing point, it means you can't poke something. Rubbish. Just rubbish. It's just doesn't make any sense. Sorry. There's enough point there to do whatever damage you want to do. Might have to tilt it down a wee bit to get that excellent pokey stabby thing, but I don't do an awful lot of poking with my knives, to be honest with you, unless I'm getting into a package. But I can do that with a belly. I don't need the pokey end. If your knife's sharp enough, you can open a package with a belly without having to worry. So, I mean, but these are wildly expensive, so much more expensive than these, but yet they do exactly the same things. I get, this was given to me, so I'm going to be honest, but this price range of knives, I buy because I want to. I buy this price range because I want to. I like the design. I like the grind. The grind on this is just unbelievable compared to most knives. And the walk and talk just drives me insane. Love it. So I don't just buy cheap knives. I buy, and if you watch the channel, I buy a range of knives. But I mean, I got into bucks this year. Now, what put me off with buck was the big 110. It was too heavy for me. It was too cumbersome. To put in my pocket, it was just too cumbersome. Because we can't have locking knives here, my knife, if I'm going out, I'd always have to have it concealed in my pocket. But then I came across this. I got a chance to put this in hand, which was the Buck 112. I'd never held one. I'd had the Buck 110, didn't like it. And it wasn't to do with the 428C, which is a fantastic steel, easy to sharpen. Again, all them things that you want in a working knife, which I believe a Buck 110 is. I got this, somebody came round to buy some knives off me, and he had this on him. He'd only just bought it. It was brand new, about 2 weeks old. And I managed to talk him out of it and traded him something else for it, because this was perfect in hand. This was absolutely perfect for me. I have a large hand. This just sits perfect. I love it. And it was in S30V. Is S30V a much better steel than a 428C? Yeah, S33 is a super steel. It's a powdered steel. It can be heat treated harder. It'll last longer. But is it what makes this knife? No, what makes this knife is the blade, the hollow grind, and the only difference between this and S30V and the 428C is longevity of cutting. And do you want to know something? I think in my whole life, the only knives that I've tended to blunt would have been this one when I was a kid, because it's a cheaper steel. It's a lesser HC, hardness steel. And this, I blunted this on many times, but that's working all day, building huts, building seats, building, tables. Yes, I have blunted it and had to resharpen it again numerous times. But as far as pocket knives goes, I can't remember the last time I blunted a knife in actual use. Not when I'm doing testing or things like that. So, but the fact that it was S30V, the size of it, I love the black. This is just black micarta, or G10 on this. I adore this in wood. I wouldn't carry it as an EDC, but if I'm camping or doing whatever I'm going to be doing, this is definitely a carrier, because it's such a lovely blade grind. It's thin enough that it'll do any task. Just a super knife, and the back lock is so secure and nice on it. Beautiful knife by Buck. So I got into Bucks. You know what I mean? And it was because I got it in hand and not because I had seen it somewhere and really, really wanted it. I just didn't like the big Buck 110. There's not much difference in weight between that and a Buck 110, but it sits in your pocket easier because it's not anywhere near as big. So what do I like now? What's my thing now? And I shocked a few people a couple of weeks ago when they asked me, what's your favourite knife, Paddy? In all my collection, it's a locking knife. It's a Chris Reeve. It's the 31. Beautiful in just the bog standard drop point. If you can call that blade shape bog standard, that's the one. I just love it. I love the hollow grind. I love everything about this. I love this block micarta on the front, black micarta. I just absolutely love everything about this knife. It is just the precision, everything about it. It's just a repeatable knife. It just feels the same every time you pick it up. I just love it. But these are the knives that I use the most. And I hear people saying about like case knives and all that, and case knives were much better in the 80s, if that's true. I don't know what one, but it was better in the 80s. They were much better. Well, do you want to know something? The blade steels haven't changed that much from the 80s and 90s in these basic knives, in the slip joint knives. There's no need to, because it was a good enough steel, easy sharpen. You don't have to buy brand new to get super knives. Look at this beautiful knife, a Shatton Morgan. Look at that bone on that. Look how well that is. Isn't that just stunning? That is absolutely stunning. Now, I think I paid £90 or £100 for that, which is probably more than you're going to pay in the States. This is second hand, but it hadn't been used. Just hadn't been used. And this is the sort of knives that I dream about finding. This is one of 100, this pattern, this bone pattern. There's more of that shape out there, but in this particular pattern, there's only 100 made. I have such joy in the fact that that's what it is. In the whole wide world, there's only 100 of these made, and I've got one. And it is stunning. And I carry this as a light carry knife, and I'll carry something like this, or my everyday carry, which is the Bexar Bear. So I'm covered. This can be to cut bits of string and whatever I'm going to do, cut a sandwich. This is if I need something a bit more, that I'm going to maybe do a bit more rougher work, because doesn't matter about this. I don't want to damage this because it's my collecting. And this is what I am. I'm a collector as well as a YouTube reviewer. And there's less and less of us about there, because more and more people are very much into the modern and change every sort of week, get a new knife every month. It has to be the newest one. A lot of my knives have been with me a long time. And the likes of Rough Rider from day one, Ganzo from day one, super knives. This is 440A, the Ganzo's 440C, just absolutely amazing. I mean, this knife, 440C, it's super. It will do anything you want it to do bushcraft wise. And I've got a wee secondary bevel because I can't be arsed just sitting doing a full, when I'm out cutting something, I ain't going to sit and be picky. I just want to get it sharp and get it back into action. That's what these are made for, in my opinion. So please, if you're just around a bit, don't get hung up on this, I must have the latest, the greatest knife. Wait a year and buy it for 40 or 50 quid. The knife's still as good. The knife is still as good. I mean, we wonder why the Chinese are selling so many knives, because they bring them in cheaper than most others with this standard of material. But they don't last. I mean, they move them on every month. Every month you're getting 3, 4, 5 different Chinese knives that are out there. Wait a year and you'll pick them up cheap because nobody wants them secondhand. They don't have a value. Very few Chinese knives have a value. You know, I'm talking about just everyday knives, which this would come under the thing. But it's titanium, it's S35BN, and you're picking it up for 40, 50 quid. Come on. Wait a year. And then that stops this influx of Chinese knives and maybe gives our own manufacturers, no matter where you are in the world, a chance to catch up, a chance to to change it into their mindset. Because we have, even in the UK, I mean, your Arthur Wrights, your Taylor's Eyewitness, we have lots of slip joint makers over here that are absolute artisans. They are cutlers, they are little messers, whatever you want to call them. They make them by hand, and that is very, very rare throughout the whole world. The amount of handwork that goes into this little Arthur Wright is amazing. And I laugh and joke about Victorinox. See this little, I think it's a Midnight Manager or something, it's got the pen on it down this side. It's got a screwdriver, it's got scissors, it's got a wee knife, it's got a wee secondary Wharncliffe knife, which is just fantastic. It's got box openers. This is super. This is on my keys for I don't know how many years. I've literally just taken it off and I have something else in my keys now. But this sits at the side of my desk just over there because it's got so many little tools that if you want a little small job done, these are perfect. So no, I don't hate Victorinox. I hate the fact that when I got into them and got the bug, I bought about 40 of the blooming things and now I don't need 35 of them. Do you know what I mean? So that annoys me because they're exciting. It's a hobby you get into. It's one of those sort of dark holes and I just jumped into it. And is the blade steel all right? Right, of course it is. It's a little pen knife. It's going to cut. It's got good geometry. The blade steel's okay. And it'll cut anything you want in a day. So, there you go. All my slagging, it's in fun. They couldn't sell that many of them for so many years. For, 100 odd years. If they weren't good. Now, right, that's all off my chest now. Have a lovely day. Don't know whether this made any sense, but you got 38 minutes off Paddy having a stupid little ramble. Take care. Bye-bye now.